What's up, YouTube? Oh, I have like a net in here. Oh, sorry about that. It's just new me. I got on here quickly because I wanted to, of course, do my med school chat, and so I decided to do a video. As you notice, I am in a different space, so I don't have, the lighting is good, because when I was in Grenada, my lighting was really bad in my room, so I wasn't really able to do, like, in my opinion, proper videos, because when the lighting is not good, so it doesn't really contrast well with the camera. I am using my phone because my husband actually says that a phone camera looks better than like my Nikon camera. I hope to get another camera, but I'm on a budget, so I don't know if I'll be able to splurge and get a camera. But phone will do for now, because the whole gist is just to kind of get the information out there. But one of the most, I guess, asked questions that I've been getting since posting my last video, and even prior to that, people were asking me, how was I going to prepare for STEP? And so I decided that that will be the topic today. I can tell you, what I did, that worked for me to prepare for STEP, and if I feel that that's a good approach, for anyone else. So number one, I did pass STEP, so yay, I'm very excited about passing STEP. I don't really want to talk about my score or anything like that, because I don't feel that that's really helpful to tell people your score, because it can either make someone feel like they're not adequate, or it can make someone feel like, why are you making this video? You didn't do well. So I just feel like to stay like in a happy, neutral area, don't even reveal like the score or anything like that. But the gist, I did pass STEP on my first try, and I will tell you, what I did to do that. So ending term 5 at SGU, I think we stopped sometime in May. We stopped, and the dean had come to talk to us and, tell us things, what he thought we should do if we weren't getting the scores that we were seeing during our practice time and dedicated and all of that. He was just giving his opinion about, postponing STEP and all of that. That was his focus for us. And I really didn't like the talk, because it wasn't a motivational thing. It was really kind of like telling us that what he is seeing, with our testing scores and things of that nature, he felt like a lot of our class wasn't really prepared to go and take step 1. And they actually extended you're able to retake terms, and now they've extended how many terms you can take. It used to be you could repeat 1 term before you basically get dismissed out of the school, but I think now you can repeat two times, so 2 terms. But check me on that. I'm not really sure. I did hear that they did extend it to 2 terms, but it may not be accurate, so you need to check that. But I know for our term, they did extend it for, if you had a repeat prior, you were able to do another. But anyway, so he came there and he was encouraging a lot of the students to repeat the term. I didn't want to do any of that. I was like, listen, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna go into my dedicated, and I'm gonna do what I need to do to pass and get an okay score, so at least an okay score. That's what my goal was, to get an average score. That was my goal. Like, that was the minimum that I needed to get. Of course, if I, got well over average, I would have been, ecstatic for that. So at that time, I didn't know how I would have done, because we had just taken BSCE and all of that stuff. Or have we taken it yet? No, we hadn't taken BSCE 2. We hadn't taken that as yet, but we were preparing for BSCE. And that study process wasn't, for me, it wasn't going as well as I wanted it to go, because again, I didn't know really how to approach the BSCE. You had so many people talking in your ear for it. So anyway, when it was time for dedicated, I ended up getting a tutor, which I used the same tutor that I had for BSCE, and we created a schedule. So my schedule basically started around 9 o'clock in the morning, and it ended around, it was supposed to end around 10 o'clock at night, because the main thing he focused on was, you know, having that schedule, sticking to the schedule, and making sure that you get sleep, adequate sleep. So we created a schedule that was designed just for me. We went over the schedule, and you know, I tweaked it here and there as I needed to, but for the most part I stuck to it. So most of the time I woke up, well, every day I woke up around 7 just to get the day started and get things prepared, like with my children, and I wanted to also work out. So I tried to, even though he said I could put a workout in the schedule, I wanted to work out before my schedule started. So I worked out in the morning around maybe 8 o'clock, sometimes 7:30 if I got there early. But definitely I was shooting for 8 o'clock to be at the gym to work out. And I only would do a half hour of workout and then 15 minutes of cool down and stretching. And then I would go and start my blocks. So what I would do, I followed the UFAP acronym, which was UWorld, First Aid, and Pathoma. I didn't really use any other resources. Initially, I was told to maybe look at Sketchy for farm, and I purchased Sketchy, so I did have that. Also from Micro, I was told to use Sketchy for that. So I had the Sketchy Farm and Sketchy Micro. I also had Boards and Beyond. I also had Amboss, and I also had Kaplan videos that someone had given me. So I had all those resources, but I just felt that was too much. So initially, I was trying to kind of see how that was going to work, but it didn't really work well. So after a few days of trying to look at Sketchy and go over that, I was like, no, I need to do the UFAP. And I got that idea from Black Kids White Coats is a place on YouTube. And there was a video regarding, like, you know, boosting your scores and, you know, trying to organize yourself to know how to approach it, how to study. Because most of us, at least for me, I didn't really know, like, how to study. We were trying to study to make sure that we're almost guaranteed to do well on the exam. And I really didn't know how to do that. So I started looking at videos to see what other people were doing outside of my tutor. So I found a video with Black Kids White Coats, and the young lady that was on there suggested following the UFAP. And I thought that was the best suggestion ever, because it really kept me with limited resources. It wasn't overwhelming, and I was able to get through first aid fully one time with annotations, because I used Boards and Beyond during my BSCE prep. And so during that time, I was able to annotate my first aid book. So I went through my first aid book, annotated during the BSCE, and then during my dedicated, I went back through my first aid book with the annotations. And so I did that. And along or simultaneously doing that, I was also doing UWorld. I did not do UWorld early. Well, I take that back. I did do UWorld early. I started it during the BSCE prep. So I ended up getting, the school gives you the subscription for UWorld, and there are about 2,800 questions on there. And so, you know, my tutor calculated how many questions I needed to do a day to make sure that I got through UWorld twice. And the first time going through UWorld was for BSCE prep. The second time would have been for dedicated. So for dedicated, I was starting UWorld my second time around, so I had to reset the UWorld. And talking about UWorld, that's another thing too. I'll probably do, well, I don't know. I was thinking maybe do a video about that, but I can maybe just say something really quick about the UWorld. So when you first start UWorld, you know, a lot of the information you may not be familiar with, and so your scores will come back like you don't know anything, and your scores will be very low. Inadequate. Like, what have I learned? You know, this is, why can't I answer these questions properly? Your scores look really bad, you know, and I was getting in the 40 percentile, 50 percentile, 60 percentile, you know, but after you have done it one time, your scores will go up. And here's the thing, and this is what I don't really like about UWorld. Yes, it is considered the gold standard for studying and all of that, but just really be careful when you're studying with it, because there is a certain way you should approach UWorld. Don't approach it with memorize, just going through the blocks and looking at the explanations. Like, you really need to understand what it is saying and understand like the explanations, because subconsciously you will remember the questions and the answers. And that's why your score typically will look better the next time you go around, because you've already seen the information. They don't change the questions. So once you've gone through it one time and you get your overall of how you did on it, that, is probably a true statement of what you really know, because you never saw those questions. When you go through it the second time around and then your score jumps up however many points, the second time I went around, I was in the 80th percentile, but I think it was because I had seen those questions before, and, subconsciously, like, I kind of knew the answers, but I do know that there were still some concepts there that I didn't quite understand completely. And so I actually ended up going through a second question bank just to check the concepts towards the end of my dedicated, because when I was doing my UWorld questions, at the end of a week of doing first aid, UWorld, and Pathoma, which I look at the videos, and I just did the videos of Pathoma along with the book, I would take an MBME exam, which is just a practice exam that simulates how the questions would be presented like in your actual step 1 exam. So the same people that write step 1, they write these MBME practice exams. And so my tutor was definitely saying, try to take those MBME exams, because at least you'll get a chance to know how the people are writing the exam and, how they're thinking. And it can help you, especially if you have test anxiety, if you have, problems taking a test. Like, I am not a very good test taker, and it's always been that way for me. And, that is another reason why I had accommodations during SGU. Well, I did. That's not the reason, but I'm glad I had accommodations during that time, because it just gave me the time to become a better test taker. I did not get accommodations for step 1 though, and that was, definitely added pressure with my dedicated study. So, that is why I definitely made sure I was doing my questions timed. And I did, and initially when I was doing UWorld, I had it on tutor mode, because I felt like, okay, I'm learning, and so I need to have it on tutor mode. But then my tutor was like, no, change it, because you need to practice taking the exam as it would be on the real day. So basically, I stopped doing tutor mode second week in, and I started doing random blocks of 40. Yeah, random blocks of 40 I would do, and they would be timed. And initially I wasn't able to finish, because I had to work myself up. I had to read faster, I had to read with understanding, and, and answer the questions properly. And so gradually my scores picked up, doing that. But initially I wasn't able to finish. So that was another, kind of a bump for me with preparing to take step 1. But eventually I got it, and time wasn't an issue. And I was thankful for that. But it took, I had 7 weeks to basically prepare for the exam. And it took all 7 weeks for me to really get that time down, to be able to finish the block and have like maybe 4 to 5 minutes left to kind of go through anything that I'd marked. So I was thankful for that. But yeah, so my day would start at 9. I would do my 2 blocks. And initially I was doing the blocks of 40, then I would review that 40. But I found myself getting tired, and my schedule called for me to do at least 2 blocks in a day. I had to do that from dedicated to make sure that I finished. And then he also pushed a 3rd block, because he was like, it'll be great if you can get through there and then also do your incorrects. So that added up to about 120 questions a day. So by the 4th week, I was doing about 120 questions a day and reviewing that. And that was a lot. That was definitely a lot. And still going through first aid based on like, if I was getting information wrong, I would go to that section in first aid, try to read that section and get an understanding of, you know, why am I getting that question wrong? So that was something that I was doing too. And I also used, I did use Boards and Beyond a couple of times during my dedicated, because especially for cardio, and I would say renal and respiratory, those were the major systems that I felt were really high yield, and I felt that I needed to really have a great understanding with those when it came to answering the questions. Now, when I actually took STEP, I didn't have a lot of cardio on my STEP exam. I had, I don't know how many questions, but it wasn't a lot of questions of cardio. It definitely was a fair exam. They are not trying to trick you. It's either you know it or you don't. Some of them, I would say 75% of the exam is either you know it or you don't, you know. The rest of the exam, there are questions on there that you're just like, I don't know what they're talking about, what they're asking. And I was hoping and praying that those were the experimental questions, because they do give you like experimental questions. So I was hoping that, but definitely it was, you know, each block for me was, I would end up, I would start the block off good, and I would be like, okay, this is going good. I know this. And then, you know, I would get to a point in the block where I was like, okay, I marked this. Oh, next question. Oh, mark that, you know. So it was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm doing. But, you know, I felt like, and I'll do another video dealing with like my STEP experience, but in preparing for STEP and taking the NBMEs every single week, I do think that it is a good preparation for step one. Now, as far as it being the predicted thing, people were asking about, was my NBME predictive of my score, or was UWorld predictive of my score? So I like the fact that I did UWorld, because STEP is similar to UWorld as far as like the setup. So that is good. For people that have test anxiety, make sure you're doing the UWorld, because if you're getting through that, it's the same type of platform setup. So that was good. So I was glad that I used UWorld, and most people use UWorld as their main source anyway. As far as the NBME, I felt like the STEP questions were similar to the NBME. As far as the length of the questions, some of them were like UWorld question style, where, you know, they were a bit more wordy. But for me, it was like NBME and UWorld mix. But I would say mostly like NBME for me. But my scores were similar to my NBME. They were not similar to my UWorld scores. So UWorld has assessments that you would take on them. There are 2 assessments, and UWorld 2 assessment is supposed to be the most predictive of what you get on STEP. It wasn't predictive for me at all. It was absolutely way off. The UWorld 1, which was considered to be the easier one, more of a practice 2. My score wasn't even near, it wasn't like the UWorld 1. So, but it wasn't far, but it wasn't like the UWorld 1. My NBME scores that I consistently had, like, my NBME scores. And so my STEP score was similar to my NBME scores. And in the range of what I was getting for the NBME scores, because it was a wide range, not a wide range, but it was definitely like, I would say between a 10 and 15 point range, and it fell within that range. And so, I would say for me, it was more predictive, the NBME scores. But using UWorld, First Aid, and Pathoma, I think that is good enough. Now, if you're not really good with Pharm and Micro, Sketchy may be for you. I just could not get on board with the Sketchy. I tried it so many times, and I tried it in 3rd term, I tried it 4th term, 5th term. I just never could get with the Sketchy. The Sketchy for me was kind of all over the place, and it gave you so much other things that you don't really need. But I know they're trying to get you to remember certain, characters and pieces of art and all of that stuff, and things that have like acorn on their head and all of these things. But for me, that just, it just was too much, and I didn't like Sketchy's approach for that. So it just didn't really work for me, but maybe for other people it's good, because I hear a lot of good things about it, but it just wasn't my thing. So for farm, I just used First Aid for farm, and honestly, that was enough. I think I missed one farm question that I know that I missed on STEP, and First Aid was fine for that. Micro, same thing. First Aid was fine for micro. On my exam, the micro was very basic. So it was stuff that you have probably already learned, and all the time that I was spending trying to like get everything down with micro, I didn't even really need to spend all that time. I could have spent time on something else. But I mean, and that's in hindsight, but during the preparation, I'm glad I went through all those things. But yeah, like First Aid was definitely on point for farm for me. It was definitely on point for micro for me. And a lot of my colleagues that had taken STEP said that to me. They were like, don't go and do all that stuff. Just do First Aid, really focused on First Aid. I will say there are questions on there that are not in First Aid. So you have to be prepared for that as well. In UWorld, when you're taking the UWorld, when you get the explanations, if you scroll down all the way to the bottom of the screen, you will see where they have like research articles or like other resources that they've used to get information. I encourage you, if you have time, click on that and read up on those articles too, if you have time, because it goes outside the box of First Aid, in my opinion. And I really think that some of those articles, I saw questions that if I wouldn't have read the article, the resource that they had there, that I might have missed the question. So, you know, that was just a little tidbit that I found. But yeah, in general, I think UFAP, which is UWorld, First Aid, and Pathoma, are definitely the main resources that you need. You don't want to get bogged down with so many resources, because it will become overwhelming, and at least for me, it would become overwhelming. And it is also recommended not to have so many resources. I mean, they said the most you should have is 3 resources, and maybe 2 more outside resources that you would go to after you've kind of used, you know, the 3 resources. So, you know, that's the structure that I did, and I was able to pass my first try, and, you know, I'm able to start my clinicals, and now, you know, the real stuff starts, because you need to make sure you're getting clinicals are different. So I have to get like letters of recommendations, and I need to do research, and I mean, I need to build my CV because I don't have a lot on my CV. So now I have to deal with other things, and I plan to take you on that journey as well. And I will be sharing with you guys what I'm doing. I am not in my apartment as yet, but I have moved back to the States. And yes, so we're just staying with family friend. I will be moving in my apartment next week, so I'm really excited about having my own space. And yeah, my background will be different again. But if you guys have any questions or concerns, please leave them down below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, share this video if you found it to be helpful, and give it a thumbs up as well. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.